Good day, everyone. Today we are now talking about the ego defense mechanisms. So, if you can remember, we talked about the different personality components according to Freud: the id, the ego, and the superego. And if you can remember that the ego works as a balancing factor to the id and also to the superego. However, there are times wherein there would be an imbalance, meaning the ego isn't able to balance the two. So what happens is that the ego would try to make a move in order to reduce the anxiety that a person is able to experience. So according to Freud, we call these as ego defense mechanisms, and a person would actually have a lot of experiences which are related to the ego defense mechanisms. So in this lesson, we will explore some of these defense mechanisms. These are just the basics. There are a lot of defense mechanisms that are not mentioned here, but these are the most basic that you yourself should know. The first one here is denial. The denial is a defense mechanism in which a person refuses to accept real events because they are unpleasant. An example of this is when a student who does cheating would always deny that he's doing that every exam, but in fact, the student is actually doing it and would try to conceal it from everybody by saying, "No, I didn't do it." Okay, that is denial, and that is a defense mechanism. Another one here is displacement, wherein it transfers inappropriate urges or behaviors into more acceptable or less threatening targets. So what we have here is a displacement wherein the person who has a more dominant um, feature characteristics or more powerful would transfer the anxiety to the less stronger person. So example here is the teacher who's in authority. The teacher has a problem at home with his or her family or the husband in particular. However, the teacher could not fight back to his or to her husband. So what the teacher might do in the school, since the student could not fight back to the teacher, so the teacher would then displace the anger to his or to her students. So that could be a displacement. So if you could observe, if you have teachers or if you have um, someone, your friends, that you can observe, why is it that that he or she is very angry right now. It with Even if you just have a very minimal mistake, why is it that he or she becomes so angry? It's not really that big deal, and then why does he or she has that reaction? So it could be a displacement. That could be a defense mechanism, which is a displacement. Another one here is the projection, wherein it the attribution of unacceptable desires to others. So basically, we can call projection as put telling other people that they're doing it, even if you are the one who's actually doing that action. So an example would be a particular student who does cheating during an exam tells to everyone that another classmate was actually cheating during the exam, where in fact he was actually the one who did that. Okay, so an example of this make it more relatable. If you could observe that there might be some people, for example, in love life for teenagers, this specific girl would tell to her friends that, hey, see, um for example, Maria is actually having a crush with John, or in fact, she is the one who has crush towards John, but she just put it into action, into words, that Maria was the one who has a crush on John. So that is projection, telling others what you feel, telling what you feel by having this someone being put into words. So that's a projection. We have also here rationalization. Rationalization is basically doing a justification of behaviors by substituting acceptable reasons for less acceptable real reasons. It's also called as sour graping. If you could, um, if there's a story about this behind why it's called as sour graping. Um, Once there was a vineyard. A vineyard is a place where grapes are planted. Um, so once once a day there was once a day wherein a wolf actually passed by that vineyard. However, the wolf wants to eat the grape but could not get it because the grape was actually at the higher place. The fruit was at a higher place, and the wolf could not get the grape right away. So, what the wolf says, "Okay, it's okay that I didn't get the grape because it's actually sour." So that's why it's called sour graping, rationalization. So basically, it's just making reasons. If you cannot get something, you actually come up with a reason to justify why you did not get it. So, for example, a student who is not able to pass an exam would tell his or her parents or someone he or she knows that he didn't pass the exam because the exam was very difficult for everybody. Okay, it's very difficult. And then we also have here the reaction formation. Reaction formation is reducing anxiety by adopting beliefs contrary to your own beliefs. So basically, reaction formation is doing the action which is in opposite of what you really feel. So for example, there's a person in your class, say for example it's your class president. You really don't like that person, that your class president. However, you tell everyone that, hey, our class president is really very good, is a good person, is a good president. That is reaction formation, doing an opposite action from what you really feel of. Regression here, on the other hand, is returning or coping strategy for less mature stages of development. Regression basically means going back to when you were a child, an action you did when you were still a child. So if you can remember when you were still a kid, it could be possible that this happened to you whenever your mother would reprimand you for doing something which is not good. You always go to your room and cry, go to that corner in your room and cry. So that's what you do every time you encounter a stress when you were still a kid. And then you're already an adult, so every time you have a situation like that, you would actually go to a room. For example, if you take your exams, if your doctoral examination, since during your childhood, when every time that you are sad, you always go to your bed cuddling with your favorite toy, and then you still do that when you are already an adult. So that is regression. Um, Another example that could be relatable to you would be when for example, you have a relationship, you have either a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So every time when you were still a kid, that every time you have a quarrel with your friends, your playmates, you would always go to your mother and tell your mother that, Mom, I was actually being bullied. I was My playmate teases me during our play. So that's what you do when you were still a kid. And this time you're old enough, you have a relationship, boyfriend or girlfriend, and then every time that you quarrel, you would always call your mom and tell your mom that you are, you know, being bullied. You have a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend. So that is going back to your childhood behaviors, childlike behaviors. That's regression. Repression basically means forgetting or suppressing painful memories and thoughts. Basically, this happens when there is a very traumatic event that happened to your life. Mostly this could happen to soldiers who are at war or in a um, very traumatic event happened when they were stationed at a place where there is war, and they go back at home. They would actually forget, suppress the painful memories that they got. Or when you were, say for example, a child who had a violent experience, a student who have a violent experience during at home some years ago, that person could be a victim of abuse, rape. That student or child or a person would try to forget that painful memory. That is a repression. We also have here the sublimation. Basically, this is redirecting unacceptable desires through socially acceptable channels. So sublimation means you have this uh, un unlikely tendency or unacceptable behavior, and in order to release that unacceptable behavior in a in the other manner, you have to do other things. Say for example here, a student who has a violent tendency, student wants to punch other people. However, um the student wants to release it, but in a good way, so that student decided to join the boxing club. So that's sublimation. So all in all, these are the defense mechanisms according to Freud. Now, why are we actually talking onto all of these defense mechanisms? So these could give us an idea as teachers or as persons in everyday life to understand why and how a person's behave the way they do. There could be basically some reasons behind those actions that they are doing. So it gives us a larger perspective, and at the same time when we will be teachers, we would have also, it would help us understand the situation of our students or with our colleagues. So this could be a great help. All right, so those are the defense mechanisms. Thank you for listening.